Good day, ladies and gentlemen, and it is 2019. 10 years ago, I started the GeneralLotz YouTube channel. Little did I know that I would meet a great many of entertaining and eclectic individuals. Little did I know that choosing to open up a YouTube channel would change my life for the better. Now, for 2019, I'm going to be reviewing nothing but Star Wars games, and to kick it off, myself, Ragekill, Reignick, and Wolfman are going to be discussing the movie that started it all, Star Wars Episode 4, A New Hope. And to give you something for your viewing pleasure, we are of course going to go through Star Wars Namco. So, to start up the video here, everyone give me your first experiences with Star Wars.
Alright, who's going to go first?
Just call us up by name.
Reignick, since you're the oldest, I won't dox your age, so go.
Oh, this is going to be embarrassing. Actually, my first experience with Star Wars, both televised in the 1980s. And this is going to be embarrassing here, but the first experience with Star Wars, the Christmas special.
What?
Yep. I was a child seeing the Christmas special, and that was my first experience. A couple months later, I got to see the full movie unedited through a local channel, which was airing it basically to fill times because with all the sporting events it ended. Needless to say, while I was a very young kid and the Christmas special was, entertaining to a young kid, I was hooked after seeing episode 4.
So what year would that have been around? Because I forget exactly when the Christmas special came out.
I know the Christmas special was the early 80s. I must have been maybe like 4.
Alright. Well, Rage, when did you see it?
Okay, my memory's a little bit fuzzy. For one thing, the holiday special came out in '78, unless they rebroadcast it on television.
They did rebroadcast it.
Oh, wow. Poor people who had to watch a rebroadcasted version.
Yep.
They were like, what do we show? We have this. Yeah, just stuff that in there.
Well, local TV back then wasn't exactly rolling in the money, so they took what they could get.
Wow. So, I never grew up being like a big Star Wars fan. I think I might have seen like bits and pieces on TV, but I didn't actually get a chance to watch it until I got the VHS collection back in like '97, which was the first time they did the special editions. So I didn't even have the originals to compare to the special edition. So I watched the special edition and I liked it, but I didn't necessarily love them at the time.
How could you?
I mean, they were good.
No, it's the special edition versus the original cut. So,
but then after I watched the special editions, a couple years later, episode 1 would have came out, which I also didn't see the big deal in at the time. But I had that group of friends that were hardcore Star Wars fans, and if you tried to question anything, they'd like shut you up, like Star Wars is amazing. But I think that left a bitter kind of taste for a while. So my first experience with Star Wars wasn't necessarily the greatest. Then I went through high school being like, oh, Star Wars is so overrated. And then later on, I eventually picked up the special edition on DVD, and I actually liked it. I thought they fixed some of the changes in the VHS versions and whatnot. And then much later, probably about 3 years ago, I want to say, I finally got around to watching the despecialized edition of A New Hope, and I guess maybe being older too and stuff, that's when I found a definite appreciation for A New Hope. And I think I actually like the despecialized version better than the special edition. I haven't seen the Blu-ray yet. I don't know if I'll pick those up at all. But I also don't think the changes are necessarily bad either, but I think we'll get into that later.
Alright, Wolfman?
My first experience with Star Wars, I mean, I had one of those childhoods where my mother would record kid shows for us to watch, and my father would record what the fuck ever on the first tape that he could grab. So, you know, it was things like, oh, here's Ghostbusters, you know, that's good for the kids, and then the next movie after that was Terminator and Fright Night. So, you know, so it was, and I'm not even just making up movies, that was a legit list, you know? So my first, it was like I had a Disney Goofy thing, and then after that it was Christine. So, once again, not making that up, that's a serious list of what...
Oh, I had Who Framed Roger Rabbit and, like, Elvira on a tape.
That's gonna be kind of confusing.
Yeah, Jessica Rabbit goes goth.
Did you hate when you would get those movies that weren't recorded all the way? You would watch it, and the ending would get cut off?
No.
Oh, that never happened to you?
No, so my experience with Star Wars was...
You're lucky. Sorry.
My experience with Star Wars was it was a Charlie Brown Valentine special. You know, the one when Linus buys the big hunk of shit for the teacher and he throws it all off the side and Snoopy eats it. The point is right after that was Star Wars. So here I am, 4 years old, you know, this one is for Valentine's Day, and then the next, oh dear, we're done for. You know, so, I mean, I'm like 4 years old, I didn't know anything about it. I mean, it was entertaining enough to keep me interested. I didn't start really getting into Star Wars until, well, you know, we had all the toys, you know, the original toys. So it wasn't like a staple in the house, it was just something that was generally watched. And then, you know, I started giving a damn once I found the very first of many special re-releases on VHS. You know, so it was, it's still a timeless classic, and it's just as entertaining now, but now at least I'm an adult, so I know what the hell is going on. Because I didn't know what this Rebel Alliance and a traitor's ship meant, you know, it was just, hey, these robots are funny and golden.
Well, I actually was the only one, I guess, that was, like, into it from the beginning. I was actually doing some mental archaeology today, trying to, like, remember when it all started, and for me it started in 1994. The reason I know the exact year is because I remember us watching it on a big screen TV that we wouldn't have past that year, because it was one of those 90s era big screen TVs that would have like screen burn on it.
Yep.
A CRT projection.
Yeah, one of those. And once it died, we never got another one. I remember the conversation that led to me actually seeing Star Wars. Somebody asked me, had I ever seen Star Wars? I was like, no. And my mother was like, you've never seen Star Wars? Because she was a big fan of it growing up. Because all the nerdy stuff that I got into was stuff that she was into back in the day, and still is. So I got to watch Star Wars, and we got the entire trilogy. Episode 4, 5, and 6. I don't remember anything from episode 4 back then, but I do remember seeing episode 5, and I remember seeing the Echo Base Doors. For some reason that sticks in my mind. I'm not really sure why. After that, I would get a VHS copy of A New Hope. And that would be like my movie for years until the special editions came out. I would watch that at least once a week. I knew what was going on in that movie. I just loved it so much. It's crazy. Then in whatever year the special editions would come out, I don't remember exactly which year that was. I think it was 96 or 97.
I was about, I want to say 12 at the time, so that makes sense.
I think we're about 6th grade.
Yeah, so I guess I was way younger than all of you.
That was like about the time when they re-released, I think the originals in theaters. Or no, I think they re-released the originals in theaters and then they released the special editions on VHS.
No, they did the specials on VHS. And the reason why I remember, not to cut you off, Lotz, is, see, New Hope was the one that played all the time, obviously. Return of the Jedi was always a meh thing. I mean, even as a kid, I hated those damn Ewoks.
Yep.
But I remember being really excited to get it because Empire Strikes Back was incomplete to us. And that's where Empire Strikes Back really sticks out to me personally out of all of them, is because I remember specifically the tape cut out right after Han Solo got frozen in carbonite, so I had no idea what happened afterwards.
Oh, jeez.
So it was literally, you may take Captain Solo to your ship, and then you see Boba Fett doing that big ass nod, and then repair the chamber, and then it just cut off. So when I finally got the VHS set, the first thing I did was I popped in The Empire Strikes Back, and I watched the end finally, and it was the most badass thing ever. It was one of the very rare times when something that you wanted to see from the time that you were a kid actually lived up to the expectations that your imagination was.
Now that's something that is something that cannot be replicated. You know, not knowing that Luke Skywalker was Darth Vader's son.
Oh, I knew that. You know how I knew? Wow, what an ending! Who'd have thought Luke Skywalker was Darth Vader's son? Thank you to blow the picture for me. You know, but then it's like if you've never seen the ending to Empire, and then you saw Return to the Jedi, and then it's like, Father, my son. It's already cat's out of the bag. You know?
That's true. Okay, before I go on, let me make sure. I did get to see A New Hope in theaters. What's kind of funny though is I still remember this too. I don't know what grade I was in or whatever, but I was telling a teacher like, yeah, but I get to go see Star Wars. And they're like, which one? And even at the time, I wanted to see Empire more than A New Hope. It was like, Empire Strikes Back! To which she responds, I don't think that's back out in theaters yet. I think it's just A New Hope. It's like, no!
Yeah, they only did that one first. I did make it a point to go see them in theaters when they did the re-release, you know, in theaters. And, you know, of course, that's one thing I'll never forget is the commercials when everybody was cheering when the Death Star blew up. And then everybody in the theater cheered too. And I don't know if they did it because it was the cool thing to do, or if it was because they were really happy that the Death Star blew up.
Bit of both.
What's actually kind of funny, and I was thinking about this today, because we're going to, of course, go through the plot synopsis, but then again, everybody already knows what the plot is, but there are a few highlights I do want to bring up.
It's good to talk about it.
Star Wars actually takes a few things from Star Trek. There's one scene with Kenobi, the famous, "There's a great disturbance in the Force, where a million voices cried out in terror and they were suddenly silenced." That's technically ripping off Star Trek. There's an episode from, I forget which season of TOS, where the space amoeba eats a bunch of Vulcans. It eats the USS Intrepid, right? And Spock literally says the same thing. He like gets a disturbance in the Vulcan, and that happens. And then, of course, you know, the special edition of the Death Star explosion, of course, is the Praxis wave from Star Trek 6.
Yeah, because you can't let a good effect go to waste. Though, looking back, I've got to go through storage and get the original unaltered laser discs and see how they hold up.
Now, I guess we can, who wants to do the synopsis, or I guess I can do it.
You can do it, it's your show.
Alright. So, Star Wars. It is episode 4. Now, initially it was just Star Wars. It was a complete in media res sort of thing. You know, you weren't supposed to know exactly what was going on, you were just supposed to pick it up. And it starts with what is now an oft mocked and oft ripped off scene of the Rebel blockade runner running away from the Star Destroyer. Now, in 1970, that effect still holds up, and in 1977, I can't imagine what the audience must have felt seeing that. You see this giant ship shooting at this really small ship that you would think one turbo laser shot would have taken out that Rebel blockade runner, but evidently not. You see that, then you immediately cut to 2 droids. This is how you actually do comic relief characters well. The 2 droids are, of course, C-3PO and R2-D2. And they're not really annoying. These are the first characters you see in the entire movie, and they kind of give a tiny bit of exposition. Not much. Like, oh yeah, we'll be blasted for sure, you know, stuff like that. And then you have the first big ground battle of the film, where a bunch of stormtroopers bust in and start shooting a bunch of Rebel fleet troopers. And yes, I know what they're called, because I'm a massive Star Wars fan. this is actually, it's actually how you do the introductory to a film right. It gives you just enough exposition to kind of give you a decent grounding of what's going on, and a good bit of action to really get you drawn into the story. You wouldn't really see that again after Episode 4, because Return of the Jedi and even Empire, to some respects, have pretty slow openers.
Yeah, I'd say so.
Yeah, there's a lot of screen techniques you don't see throughout the rest of the series too often. Like, just from this sequence alone, although it is used throughout the entire film, Lucas uses a lot of cuts and fades and screen wipes, which are very, very reminiscent of Akira Kurosawa's, The Seven Samurai and Ran.
Yes, it's very true. The thing is a lot of the inspiration definitely came from those old samurai movies, too. And I think Lucas has even gone on record and admitted that, too.
Imitation is the sincerest form of flattery.
Well, why not? I mean, that's where they got Indiana Jones from as well. I mean, they got that from the old serials.
Yeah, and that's really what the movies of this era really pretty much are. It's them taking their love of the old serial movies of the early 1900s and basically saying, you know what, we need more of this for a new generation.
And it works. I mean, everything is done sort of visually as well. I mean, they don't spend 20 minutes explaining who Vader is. The second he comes on screen, he's this big black monster, and he just radiates menace. And
Boy, does that sound filthy.
Well, yeah, I don't even want to bring up the Star Wars porn parody, but yeah.
No, it's okay. That might actually be better than the Christmas special.
This is true.
I think anything would be better than the Christmas special. I actually have seen the Christmas special, and at the time, I was really into Terraria.
The Christmas special has, like, virtual Wookiee porn.
What?
Yeah, it does. Yeah. Chewbacca's, like, grandfather or father, like, puts on this VR headset, and there's this attractive woman, like, talking to him, and it's weird. But anyway, back to a real movie.
Oh my god, now I got the image of Chewbacca blowing his cookies, just...
You're not far off. That's actually what happens.
And there goes my childhood.
Let's see. But, back to the good crap.
As long as we don't talk the logistics of this junk.
Yes.
Moving on.
Now, after Darth Vader gets introduced, he of course is talking to Princess Leia, saying like, the Imperial Senate, is not going to help you out or anything like that. The Imperial Senate would not really be followed up on after this. It's kind of funny, like, the Imperial Senate evidently existed for a while prior to this, but, like, it just dissolved, like, immediately. Not that it had any power to begin with. Also, to show off my Star Wars nerd cred, there's actually a stormtrooper that gets a full comic devoted to... Well, a full short story devoted to him in one of the comics. Now, there's another scene that's often mocked that I don't think is particularly fair. It's where, like, this Imperial gunner's like, there's no life forms aboard, so don't blast it. Like, what are you paying by the laser? It's like, well, you're on a warship over a planet. You don't want to shoot unless you absolutely have to.
That the fact that salvage. You don't just destroy something just to destroy it unless it's an imminent threat.
Well, that's always been a reoccurring theme. It's just if one stormtrooper hadn't dicked up, we wouldn't have the series. I mean, if they had blown that fucking thing to smithereens, that would have been the end of it. Just and then and that would have been the end of it. And it's the same thing with when they let them out of the chamber later on to stop the garbage compactor. I mean, can you imagine if that one had just done what he was supposed to do, and they would have just gotten crushed, and that would have been the end of it.
That would have
the joys of plot armor.
That would have been a very, very, very dark ending. So now we're on Tatooine. We have the droids walking around. They get picked up by the Jawas. Now, in the special super edition, we see more of the Sandcrawler. The Jawas are an interesting bunch of griblets. They are not nearly as annoying as the Ewoks. They're actually kind of cool. They actually are kind of menacing. You never really know what they look like. And they're actually kind of badass in that they just straight up shoot R2-D2 and kidnap C-3PO.
Oh, those things scared the shit out of me as a kid. One of my biggest fears, and I can thank the Amityville Horror for this, is fucking eyes in the dark. I can't handle that. So seeing them when they were peeking in the dark, it was just like, oh god, you know, I couldn't do it. But nowadays, like, I'm over it. But nowadays, just watching them stalking R2, it reminds me of my daughters when I come home from grocery shopping. You know, he's got the Pringles.
Pringles.
The worst part for me is, before I saw Star Wars proper, I'd actually snuck one of my dad's tapes, and it was Phantasm.
Oh, I was just gonna say that when I think of Jawas, I think of Phantasm.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Oh, that movie.
They might be tiny, but they're creepy little bastards.
That was, but you know what? That was unintentionally the funniest part of Phantasm was when that thing chased after Jody and the thing, and he's coming through. The brother with the panties in his mouth. What the heck? Hang on a minute, my brother's got a problem.
And then in the second one, one of the balls like has a laser and it makes the lightsaber sound.
Yeah. That was really done as a sly nod at that point, though.
Yep.
But you ever thought we'd talk about Phantasm in a Star Wars?
Yeah. We don't have enough time to talk about the Phantasm movie.
Yeah,
So
back
after
to the Star Wars.
So after R2 and 3PO get kidnapped by the Jawas, there's actually kind of a nice little character building scene between the two, because you kind of see that they actually do care about each other. And in the novelization, it actually goes a bit further than that, to where like it's an actual version. Well, it's a real friendship. I feel like the prequels kind of cheapen that out, though, and that they kind of show that like 3PO got mind wiped, but R2 didn't. But anyway, we eventually get introduced to Luke Skywalker, who is a skinny little desert kid that is, in the novelization at least, referred to as Wormy. He's kind of an overly excitable kind of guy. And of course, this is where the movie could have actually ended too, when they're buying the droids. Initially, Luke's uncle doesn't want to buy R2-D2 and instead wants to buy the R5 droid. That, yes, of course, did get an action figure made out of him. Why wouldn't he? And evidently the action figure can shoot a missile. Now, in one of the comics, the R5 droid is actually a Jedi, evidently. Not really sure where they got that. Anyway, they buy the droids. We learn about Luke. He wants to, you know, do something adventurous. Which, of course, is a classic cinematic thing. If he didn't want to be a hero, he'd be kind of boring, wouldn't he? And Luke is actually, even by modern standards, kind of well off. Not only does he own his own car, but he also owns his own plane. You only see a model of it, but canonically he owns a T-16 Skyhopper, which is his own plane. His own goddamn plane. Yeah, he's complaining?
Hey, moisture farming is a pretty good business.
Evidently, he's like he's got his own car and a plane. I want a plane. So the plot really does get kicked off when he's cleaning up R2-D2, and out comes Princess Leia, saying, "Help me, Obi-Wan Kenobi. You're my only hope." What's kind of funny is in the Namco game, which I'm playing now, and I'm actually fighting a Darth Vader that transforms into a flying skull because.
Scorpion.
Wait, what?
Oh, you're past the scorpion part?
Yeah, he's now turned into a giant bat, so...
Okay, as an ex-Namco employee, and even though it's not my division, I want to apologize to the Namco game. It was the 80s. There was a lot of drugs.
Yeah, because this Darth Vader... I'm fighting Darth Vader in an ancient Egyptian room, and he is now a flying demonic skull bat beast.
Yeah, you know, I read somewhere about that, and there was some sort of explanation given for that. It actually made sense, somehow.
Essentially, it's supposed to be Darth Vader force projecting.
Well, that's projection. Yeah, in the Namco game,
I think nowadays they would call that gaslighting.
God damn it! This boss is actually pretty difficult because he's very cheap. But in the game, in the Namco game. Wait, what?
You can only get hit once, right?
Yeah, that's why I'm just constantly reloading the save. But in the game, Leia already knows Luke. He's like, "Luke, I need you to help me." And Obi-Wan in this game also has evidently never met Luke. And it's like, "I'm being held on Kessel." It's like, wait a minute, really? I don't remember that happening in the movie.
Yeah, I know. I mean, Uncle Ben is being held on Kessel. This brings up some serious problems.
Yes. So ultimately, you find that you know, the droid belongs to Obi-Wan Kenobi. Luke is gonna go try to find old Ben Kenobi. I mean, that's the thing that always has irked me. It's like, okay, wait a minute. You're going incognito on Tatooine, right? So instead of changing your last name, you change your first name. Okay, instead of Obi-Wan, it's now Ben. It's still the last name. It's like, oh, it's the guy that looks exactly like my old master, but oh, it's a different name. Whatever.
Well, it's a pseudonym too, you know.
Yeah, but he still has the same last name. It's like if I changed my name from, you know, John to Joe. That wouldn't really work. But anyway, R2
Well,
eventually...
It's kind of like, no, you've got the wrong number. This is 912.
It's like 913. But eventually, R2-D2 escapes, and that's where the plot really kicks off. Because Luke and 3PO go out trying to find him, and Luke gets his ass completely demolished by the sand people. But, oh, god damn it. Okay, that is bullshit. I literally killed Gauss Vader as I died.
Yeah, that happens. The no-win state.
I don't believe in a no-win scenario. This is Star Trek. Let's see
Welcome to Japanese Nintendo games. Well, Famicom, sorry.
It's technically the Famicom games. So,
Be glad it's not the disc system.
and so...
Oh god, that thing was such a pissy thing to own. I had the disc drive system, and what a finicky fucker.
Yeah, the belts just turned to goo after a while.
Yeah, they're done.
Low quality rubber, I guess.
Some of them just have inherent flaws. I mean, like, I wanted to get a CDI so badly, and then I found out that there's essentially a kill switch in all of them.
Yeah, you gotta cut the chip and reroute a trace.
Yeah, because the battery or something dies after 25 years.
Yeah.
Only 25.
And instead of actually putting it on a separate battery holder, it's like, let's put it in the chip.
Enjoy
Genius
it while you
move.
can.
Yeah, but then with the CDI, all you can do is play Zelda and Link's Revenge, or whatever the hell that was.
Yeah, they had a decent version of Tetris.
But everything has a decent version of Tetris.
Except Korean handhelds.
Hey, plus you get Takeshi's Revenge.
Yeah.
I need revenge on Vader here. Anyway, moving on. Obi-Wan shows up in the special edition. They changed his voice, his crate dragon scream. Honestly, I like the original one. The new one sounds kind of like a drunken frat boy almost. Not...
Oh god. Drunken frat boys on Tatooine. That would be a rather weird movie.
Yeah, it's the 70s grindhouse version of the Star Wars.
Sounds like a robot chicken sketch.
Luke, what are you doing behind the shed with that womp rat?
Oh god, no.
You don't want to know.
Uncle Owen, I'm bullseyeing it!
That's just horrible.
Wedge, keep watching.
Oh,
But wait, Wedge wasn't there yet. It would be big. Technically, it would be
big.
Biggs. Why do you think they
I'm
call him
sorry.
Biggs?
Luke, I got your 6!
Oh.
Actually, it's a deleted scene between Biggs and Luke. It's actually pretty good, but I'm glad they cut it out because it did need to be cut for time. Ultimately, Obi-Wan takes Luke to his desert shack and shows him the lightsaber, and that, of course, is a very famous scene in and of itself because it's like a lightsaber. It's like a...
that does not sound appropriate at all.
This is true.
Hey, you know,
Do you listen to yourself once?
technically, Luke was of legal age.
Well, okay, on a slightly more serious note, here we have the scene where Luke is, investigating the lightsaber. He puts the emitter at his face. This movie could have ended very quickly.
Da, 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 da. There is another. Okay, wouldn't that be the most hilarious thing, though? I'm sure there's a Robot Chicken sketch. Like, okay, he does that. He literally brains himself with that. It's like, oh dear, I'm gonna have to go find Leia now. Maybe we shouldn't have split them up.
That sounds like something Disney would do. They would do like an intentional alternate universe series where
Don't give
Leia
them ideas.
is becoming the one.
Please no. Please God no.
Leia is badass enough without her being a Jedi, and, well, losing Luke that way would be just humiliating. Don't give Disney ideas.
Yes, it would. I mean, that's almost as bad as the breast milk. But anyway, breast milk aside, that's also where we get the reference to the Clone Wars. Now, one thing that's kind of weird, though, as a kid, I guess I never picked up on the Clone Wars, because I never remembered that line until I finally listened to it. I was like, surely that wasn't in it. They just added that afterwards. Nope, he does say Clone Wars. And the Clone Wars at that time was supposed to be different, where the clones were the bad guys, but as we now know, that wasn't the case. And so, essentially, as with all these films, we of course have to have Luke's parents die off, and that's actually kind of a violent scene too, because he sees their charred corpses.
Oh yeah, those skeletons are creepy.
You only see it for a second, but you don't forget it. That's for sure.
Oh god, I wore out the rewound button trying to pause it at the right spot so you could get a good look at that. God damn, we were sick as kids.
Yep. Oh, my parents did. How'd they die?
And then
They
you
were
try to figure
toasted.
out which body is which.
Oh. Well, I imagine you could tell from the height, but then again, they were kind of curled in a semi-fetal position, so that's going to make things a little difficult.
I bet Uncle Owen was the one that got shot in the back. You know, Aunt Beru got blasted in the boobs and fell across the table, and then Uncle Owen was like, "Fuck her, she's dead. I'll get out of here."
God damn, I'm still on that same boss. And so we've got Mos Eisley Space Fort. You'll never find a more wretched hive of scum and villainy.
Villainy.
But before you jump on, there is one thing that always stuck out to me. One of the big reoccurring jokes in the entire franchise is that the stormtroopers, you know, they can't hit shit. So these shots are far too precise. Only Imperial stormtroopers would fire with such accuracy. Really?
Well, in the novelizations and every other form of media, they are deadly accurate. But remember, we're working with movie here, so plot armor.
Yeah, if they
Something
could
like
actually,
that.
if they could shoot for shit, the movie would be over in like 5 minutes.
It's like aliens in the acid blood. It only melts things when theatrically appropriate.
And Terminator, the Terminators can only hit when they need to.
Well, to be honest with you, the acid blood did literally melt everything. I mean, it melted the spaceship, it melted Drake's face, it melted Hicks' armor, it melted the floor, it melted
The
everything.
shotgun.
Yep.
Not the Ithaca. Let's see, where were we? Mos Eisley Spaceport. Now, this is another one of those things where the special edition added a bunch of crap that really wasn't necessary.
Yeah.
And added some humor that wasn't necessary either. The Mos Eisley scene is pretty great. Now, is Mos Eisley like a big wretched hive? It doesn't look that wretched, at least from what we see. And
Yeah, it's like a more colorful version of the bar I usually visit.
and of
I'm
course,
surprised. Well, okay, on the special editions, I'm surprised Lucas never removed the blood on the arm that got chopped off, because wasn't the lightsaber cauterized the arm anyways?
yes. But then, if you actually look, the arm is different. It starts out where it's kind of like a flipper, then becomes kind of like a werewolf arm.
Yeah, that's true.
But we're kind of getting ahead of ourselves. So, like, they go in the bar, and it's the nutty Star Wars bar, as Bill Murray would say. Every single alien in that bar has a short story. Even the band! The band has its own short story. Tales from Mos Eisley's Cantina. And the crazy thing is, it's actually pretty good. And so
Yeah,
that's...
Callahan's cross time, bar just in Star Wars.
Crap, no. I messed up the load state. I'm still fighting that fucking flying bastard. It is not an easy boss to fight. Let's see, where was I? So, this of course is the other famous scene where they meet Han Solo. And, that's one of those things where only Harrison, I think, could have really pulled that off. Because he just had the right look, he had the right voice, he had the right bearing.
We almost didn't end up with him. We almost ended up with Christopher Walken or Burt Reynolds, Jack Nicholson. Al Pacino was considered. So was
Oh my
Chevy
God.
Chase.
Can you imagine Al Pacino playing Han Solo?
A very different movie, man.
Oh, it would be totally different. So you want me to take you up to Alderaan? You better give me a fuck ton of money. And then when I get a hold of Princess Leia, I'm gonna grab that fat ass! Oh wait, this is before he smoked like 50 fucking packs of cigarettes a day and got the gravelly voice. So
Exactly. So it would have still would have been the same feel, just a little bit less gravel.
well, you want me to take you up to Mos Eisley? I could take you out of Mos Eisley. You know, it's gonna cost a lot of credits and everything. And Jabba, would you shut the fuck up already?
Christopher Walken with it. So, you want me to take you to Mos Eisley? That's going to be a lot of credits. This guy is unfucking believable.
I did. You're talking to the man who did the Kessel one with a watch stuck up his ass. That's how I knew how fast I did it.
Didn't Robert Englund audition for Luke? I could be wrong about that.
No, fucking Freddy. Freddy as Luke.
Well, it's a young Robert Englund, so he actually could have pulled it off, because young
wait.
Robert Englund wasn't that creepy.
Right. No, I think England was another runner-up for Han Solo.
I could see it.
But I mean, it's IMDb, so we don't know. There's so many names here: Steve Martin, Sylvester Stallone, John Travolta,
Yeah.
James Woods,
Well, you know, it's like I try to use the Force, you know, and then when
Jack Nicholson.
when I turn this hat around, you know, it switches around to the Force, you know. And I mean,
De
you know,
Niro.
you shouldn't be sitting on street corners singing, you know. There's not a lot of nice guys here in Mos Eisley.
Here's Solo.
You sounded more like Rodney Dangerfield.
Hey, you know, it's rough being me, I tell you. I got Jabba the Hutt coming after me. I get no respect from him. Oh, I tried to get a hold of Princess Leia, but she was out back smooching with her brother. She'd rather have him than me.
Oh, Kurt Russell's also on this list, and Nick Nolte. Jesus, there's so many names
I
on
can
here.
see Kurt Russell doing it.
Yeah, but we might not have gotten Big Trouble in Little China.
Harrison
Right.
Ford is Jack Burton. That could work.
I could do Harrison Ford as Jack Burton. That'd be great.
Supposedly Billy D. Williams auditioned for Han Solo as well.
That wasn't gonna happen.
Okay, so this, of course, is yet another famous scene with him going against Greedo. Now, that, of course, is where they changed it to where Greedo shot first.
No. No.
Yeah, can we settle that debate once and for all? Who shot first?
Han shot first.
Han. Well, we wanted to make him a little less cold-blooded. Get the fuck out of here. It's not Disney yet.
Instead, he like cocks his neck in a funky direction to dodge
Yeah,
it.
It's just exactly. It's just we did it so that it looked like he tilted his neck just a little bit. Yes, you dodged a laser going faster than the speed of light.
Because he had that vest that gives him like plus 20 to his reflexes.
Unless he has the Force and he's or something, you know.
Oh, we don't know. Greedo could have taken the old GURPS rule. Greedo could have taken Imperial Stormtrooper Academy marksmanship.
Or he could have just been drunk.
This is true.
Greedo, of course, was actually played by a woman, believe it or not. And Greedo did get his own short story, and he was pretty much a loser, like a big loser. And this was supposed to be his big break, and well, it didn't end well. Now, in the original trilogy, you didn't actually see Jabba after this. That was added in, and I gotta say, that scene doesn't add much. You really don't need it.
Well, would you rather had the original footage where it was just a fat guy in a fur coat
No. Just
with a Scottish accent?
It would have made the Hutts very, very different.
It was just it was a fucking pimp hanging outside the Millennium Falcon. Han, my boy. You
Get it done there, boy.
Instead of it sounding like the drunk at the end of the bar going.
So, they eventually get off of Tatooine. They're, of course, trying to escape the Imperial Star Destroyer that's up there. Now, in the original movie, he just kind of moves to the left, and Robot Chicken makes fun of this. There's actually a recut, Star Wars Revisited, that actually makes him actually move the Millennium Falcon. The Millennium Falcon in of itself is one of those famous Star Wars sci-fi ships. Almost as famous as the Enterprise itself. I'm a big fan of the design, actually. I think it actually looks pretty cool.
Yeah, it's a hamburger with a what was it, a pickle or an olive? A hamburger and an olive. is what they got the idea from.
Yeah. The asymmetrical design is definitely something that was not seen in a lot of sci-fi, and Lucas chose it for a reason.
Now, what's kind of funny is you also... Oh, go on.
Sometimes the most simple, results are the best. I mean, we got Pac-Man from a pizza.
Pac pizza.
Fuck, man.
Paku
Yeah.
Paku.
And you actually get to see some early Luke, where he's like, "What's that flashing?" It's like, "Shut the fuck up, Luke. I'm gonna chuck you out the airlock."
They didn't care at that point. Luke was a ball buster.
And so, finally, we get to see the Death Star. Now, we do get to see the Death Star blow up Alderaan. That did look pretty cool. It looks cool even today. Even in 2018. In 1977, once again, that must have really shocked audiences, like, quite a bit.
Yeah, they really took a lot when it came to practical effects. This is the era before CG, folks. So, enjoy it while you can.
And it looked good. That's one of the things. CG ages so fast. I had forgotten just how bad the prequel trilogy looked. But moving on from that, because we can go on for hours about that.
Well, the one thing I do have to say about it is that it was what made it so effective was the way that it was shot. You had Peter Cushing just being amazing as always, and then the build up to all that. It wasn't just you may fire when ready, and then the shit shot. It was you had that build up, and then you had the guy flipping the dial.
That is a cool sound effect.
Well, that's one of the things that really endears me to the Imperial Army is the badass sounds. You cannot beat a TIE fighter screaming by sound. I love that sound more than anything.
It is a classic.
And like I say, it's all really, really good Foley and practical effects. And all the sound, nothing was, a super digitized sound effect. They just took standard sounds that exist in the world, amped them up, and spent some time in the studio.
Well, I think that's where you get the best results. It's like in RoboCop with Ed 209. That's a jaguar and a pig squealing played backwards. Seriously.
Yeah.
But no, what made that scene so effective, it was the build-up, and then the payoff was just, you weren't disappointed.
God damn, this game is tough.
Yes.
Welcome to the childhood of the, several generations from the 80s and 90s.
Well, that's kind of that's a rule of thumb when it comes to Japanese and any American NES games. If it wasn't released in America, it was either too bad or too hard.
I think it's a bit of both in this.
Well, in certain cases, there is a third exception, and that is, it was too Japanese.
That people wouldn't get it, yeah.
Alright, so moving right along to the Death Star scene, and the Death Star infiltration is one of those things that I will admit it doesn't age as well as I would like. Simply because they bring in the Millennium Falcon. It looks really good. But then you got some plot issues that I have. And that, of course, is where they send in, the scanning team to see if there's anything on the ship. And they're carrying these big-ass boxes. It's like, the future, ladies and gentlemen. And all they gotta do is just... All the crew of the Millennium Falcon has to do is just beat them up. And then they call in some stormtroopers, beat them up, and take their armor. And no one notices this. No one notices that, they're not calling in. No one notices that even if they do call in, it's the wrong voice. That's a bit silly. I will admit that.
Well, the other thing, too, is when R2-D2 and 3PO launched out of the escape pod in the beginning, hey, there goes that one. Hold your fire. Doesn't have any life forms on it. But meanwhile, there's a big, huge freighter coming in. You don't think they would have scanned that and said, yeah, there's some life forms on that shit? Why go through all the trouble with bringing in the huge boxes?
Now, you see, this is what I always thought to the movies, that some of the stormtroopers have what I jokingly call Walmart worker syndrome. It's like, here we go, it's another paycheck, let's get this over with. As opposed to doing their job as a proper military, to them it just becomes, this soul-crushing job of, alright, I got another 12 hours on shift. Shoot me now.
And that actually does happen. There's some more cool scenes where the lasers are let off. And R2-D2 finds that Princess Leia is on the... Actually, no, I'm kind of getting ahead of myself because I know the plot. Everyone already knows the plot, so it's not like it's that big of a deal. Obi-Wan decides to go shut down the tractor beam, and they're initially just gonna chill in that office. I'm not really sure why they think they can get away with that, but whatever. And R2-D2 inadvertently finds that Princess Leia is being held in the detention block, and so Luke is like, you know, Han, if we go rescue her, she's rich, she'll give you some money, and maybe a blowjob. Oh, never mind, that would never happen. And so they decide to set out with Chewbacca as their fake prisoner. This is another pretty cool scene. These are some really, really nice sets that really hold up. It does feel like you're on the Death Star. Well, it does feel like you're seeing the Death Star. It doesn't look like it. I guess the best way to point it out, way to describe it is the Death Star sets look like a real space station.
Yeah, the sense of scale is really, really good.
I guess the best thing is compare it to the Star Trek sets. The Star Trek sets were pretty cheesy compared to what the Star Wars sets were. And I'm a big fan of Star Trek. So then you got the detention block battle, which is yet another really epic laser duel. And they of course find Princess Leia, and Carrie Fisher at this point in time was really, really attractive, even with the cinnamon bun hair. It's both. It doesn't age well just because Luke is Leia's sister. So, like, Luke is, like, just completely, practically drooling at the mouth when he sees her. It's like, I'm Luke Skywalker, I'm here to rescue you. You're who?
Did you want to toss some icing on them cinnamon buns? God.
I don't know.
1970s Coke was a thing, folks.
So they rescue
Aren't you a
Princess
little short for a stormtrooper?
No.
Oh, yeah.
When I make up...
You see, this is why I've never cosplayed as a stormtrooper. I've made the armor for other people, but I refuse to wear it because I know I will get that line.
And that's why next year, or that next year, this is being recorded in 2018. Oh no! Okay, I don't know where to go in this, so we're not going to finish Namco Star Wars.
If someone gives you that line, just say, you want to find out?
Oh my. Alright, so I gave up on Namco Star Wars. I'm sorry, I just can't do it.
Just walk away for a half an hour and come back and you'll get it.
So instead, we're moving on to Super Star Wars as background. Okay, so we're kind of getting bogged down. There's so much to talk about. There's one line I do want to bring up. The epic Harrison Ford line, like, boring conversation anyway. After I heard that line, as a kid, I used to say it all the time whenever I would hang up the phone. And then, I forget what year it was, I got a toy of Han Solo's blaster. And I do not feel embarrassed by saying what I'm about to say. Okay? On Christmas morning, 19 whatever the fuck it was, I literally called up my grandmother to say I got Han Solo's blaster, and then reenacted that scene. Complete with line and fake shooting the phone. Why?
We're fine. We're all fine here now. How are you?
I did the I completely reenacted the scene. And it's still technically it's wrong because Han Solo used an E11 blaster, not his DL-44. You should have known that.
Get out of here with that nonsense.
So yeah, that's
The
how much I
L-44 is iconic.
It was kind of a funny thing too because it was bright red. Because you don't want it to be mistaken for a real gun.
Now, that being said, remember, that law passed right after LJN, of all companies, got into trouble with their Intertech water guns, which I admittedly had a lot of.
And I didn't even know, because I was a kid at the time. Alright, so, you got the Death Star, you got the scene where they're in the Crusher, and, you know, Princess Leia is probably really really uncomfortable in that scene, because she's got, like, this thin, like, almost nightgown dress on in that shit water. I know that might sound gross, but you know that's what that is.
Well, my question is, where in the world did that parasite come from? Because, remember, contractors are building the Death Star. That means somebody either put it there as a, you know, a gaff, or it was intended to be there.
I think
It's like an all-natural way of breaking down the garbage.
Apparently.
It's one of those things where I just kind of take it as a movie kind of thing, because it doesn't really make that much sense, especially when you think about it. In the novel, Death Star doesn't even cover it, so, yeah.
Poor Carrie Fisher had to duct tape her boobs in that dress. Because George Lucas said, like, in space there are no bras.
I like that idea. I like that idea a lot. A lot of back
She had that
problems.
classic line, "You came in that thing."
Well, you know, it gets lonely in space, and Chewbacca was willing. But anyway, Chewbacca being willing aside, they get out of the trash compactor.
Lotz, you do not want to go there. Let's change the subject quick.
Yeah, it's a deviant.
It's a trap.
It's a tarb. Let's see, where was I?
Akbar senses are tingling.
They eventually get out of the trash compactor. There's some more laser fighting, and I of course reenacted all the Han Solo scenes as a kid, especially.
Oh yeah,
when
Han Solo is the shit.
And we'll talk about Han Solo in a minute, just because we can talk about it for hours, you know.
Harrison Ford is the shit.
Because as a kid, Luke is supposed to be like the one that you're supposed to like, but Han Solo is the one that everyone really liked.
Oh yeah, because it was Harrison Ford. That's why when I was a kid, I always wanted to be Indiana Jones.
I never was a big Indiana Jones fan as a kid. I almost said Finn. Oh, it's not a Finn. Let's see, where was I?
Oh yeah, you're American. You're not from Finland.
Berkeley. I don't know what that means. I got Finnish glasses. Because it's the only place they can grind things that thick. So, the escape from the Death Star is actually another iconic scene where they're fighting off the TIE fighters. This scene really stands the test of time because it's all practical and it shows. I mean, it is absolutely beautiful, to say the least. And the lines they have are also quite good as well. The quad lasers sound really, really good. And all the characters actually get to participate in the battle, which you don't normally see, especially these days.
Yeah, for some reason these days, there's no focus on the fact that, hey, wait, I've got control of my own life now. That means I better fight back, or I better actually contribute to the cause. No, it's, oh, I'm the chosen one, and I'm supposed to have this, supposed to have that. Okay, kids, we grew up in an era where nothing was handed to you. You had to work for it. In this case, they had to fight for it.
And it was an epic battle. So, after the Death Star scene, the movie really speeds up a bit. And it ends pretty fast. After the Death Star scene, you know, they get to Yavin, they sit around for a minute. You know, they talk about the plan of attack using the one-man fighters, and then it's the final battle. It goes fast, because the movie doesn't feel long. But it just seems like after the Death Star, it just rushes to the ending for whatever reason.
Final countdown. Sorry.
And that final Death Star battle is just epic.
Did we completely miss talking about what happened to old Ben?
Oops!
Yeah, we did. Old Ben, no respect, man.
Well, you know what? Fuck him.
Well,
Yeah,
Alex Guinness hated the role anyways.
Okay, yeah, I missed out on that. Okay,
Though he did come back for Jedi, so.
And Empire, he was in that too. Okay, old Ben, he shuts down the tractor beam so they can escape.
No.
And there's an epic lightsaber duel between him and Vader. It's actually a pretty good duel. It's not as fancy as what we would see like in the prequels and things of that nature, but I still think it works pretty well. It's a much more visceral duel in and of itself.
And that's because it's actually based off actual martial arts. It's based off Kenjutsu.
And
not just Raver Wars. It's actual proper sword, proper techniques with a sword.
And you actually care because, you know, old Ben, he's actually a cool character. He's not just somebody who is an annoying pissant. Anakin. But annoying pissants aside.
No, kidding.
Hey, what?
Nothing. I was gonna quote a line from Jar Jar Binks, but I don't want to cause everyone to get ear bleeding.
That shall not be. Jar Jar Binks doesn't exist in this Let's Play / discussion. Now,
actually, he probably doesn't because, remember, after the events of the prequels, I wouldn't be surprised if he committed suicide because no one knows what happened to him after a while.
That's true. And they never actually said. We just assume he's dead.
Yeah, but you can't also fault George Lucas because he knew the fans fucking hated him and he actually listened and kept them off. He could have been a prick and made him like a real central character.
Well, that was originally the goal. He was supposed to be the Phantom Menace.
Moving right along.
Menace, all right. Definitely a menace. I'll agree with that one.
Moving right along from Jim Jam. The end of the duel has Old Ben just getting... Old Ben ends up just sort of like teleporting into a Force Ghost because Vader doesn't actually kill him. He just ends up slicing through his robes. Now, in the movies, you see him show up as a Force ghost now and again, but in the comics, he like shows up all the time helping out Luke. And later in this month, I'm going to be reviewing Shadows of the Empire. He does help out Luke in that as well, but like giving him Super Saiyan Force powers to take on what is effectively a female Terminator. So there's that.
The funny thing about that is, can you just imagine if the Force wasn't real and Ben Kenobi was just like a psychotic voice in Luke's head, like in Psycho?
You know, that could work, but if it actually did help him destroy the Death Star, there's no problem with that.
It would have explained why you don't see Luke and Leia on screen at the same time.
Ben's just Luke's DTs. You know, he's completely lost it.
I'm not Luke. I'm Leia Organa.
Oh my god. Anthony Perkins is Luke Skywalker.
That was a nice little throwback right there. But yeah, it was an iconic sequence, and it definitely made Luke grow up and stop being a ball buster. You know, just seeing it, you saw a total shift in Luke's character. He went from being a teenager to, you know, what's this? And then getting bitch slapped in the hand by Han Solo to, I don't believe in this. This all can't be real. I used to bullseye this, and I used to... As soon as that happened, he like snapped out of it and grew up and started to really come into his role.
And became less wormy and more Jedi Master material. So the final battle is all of the one-man fighters fighting against the Death Star. Now they initially don't even launch any fighters because Tarkin is like, nothing can destroy this battle station, whereas Vader's like, bitch please.
Take no chances, just take care of the shop.
And that's when we're introduced to the most important character of all, Porkins.
Hey, Porkins did the best he could. You know, he was from a high-gravity planet, okay?
You know what? I'm surprised Porkins was able to fit in the fucking ship to begin with.
I'm surprised George Lucas actually named him Porkins.
You know, Jack Porkins was his full name. From a high-gravity...
As stated, 70s. You could get away with it.
And we see a lot of the X-Wing pilots die off.
This scene to me, just before you get started into it, was what made the movie for me. You could have just released the movie with this final battle alone, and it had enough action, direction, beautiful shots, fantastic sound effects, everything in general. This alone made the movie so good.
Yeah, it's almost as if it lived up to its theme of wars in space.
Yeah, one of those space battles. So
something like that.
Instead of pod... Anyway, moving on.
Battle Beyond the Stars. Oh, wait.
Well, what made it so good for me was, it was just like, you don't see a lot of movies where you get that feeling and tension, you know, like, or like the hairs on your arms stand up, or sometimes you might feel like a welling of emotion. But the way the music that John Williams was belting out, and just that final chase at the end, you know, the Force is strong with this one, you know, and it was just amazing, that final trench run. That wow.
And it still is very effective even to this day. And then
it's like the scene in Jaws when, you know, Jaws is coming after Brody when he's hanging on the top of the mast and he, you know, smile you son of a bitch. It's that effective of a scene. And you cannot tell me that Steven Spielberg did not have a hand in this movie.
I think
no, because Lucas and Spielberg were very close friends.
Exactly. So I have a feeling that there was a lot of Spielberg saying, why don't you try this? And it worked.
This is one of those movies where if just one element was out of place, if the music wasn't quite right, if a scene wasn't shot just right, it would all fall apart. This is an example of a movie where literally everything, they rolled all 20s, so to speak.
Yeah, lightning in a bottle.
And
that's a perfect word. They caught lightning in a bottle.
And it's easy to see that it has lasted so long. It has inspired so much. And really, the best part of the trench run, the most memorable part for me is, wahoo! When you hear that, I can only imagine in 1977, the entire theater must have erupted in applause. When you see Han...
Some pants must have erupted when they heard that.
Knowing that Han came back.
Because, like, everybody wanted... Because it didn't seem like he was coming back. It's not. It is not foreshadowed at all. And then, boom. He has the most perfect line of wahoo. And it's the Millennium Falcon. It's Chewie. It's like... that is the perfect moment in that movie. I think it's actually the best moment.
And Darth
episode
Vader
4.
just had the perfect response. What?
And then, well, Han Solo helped save the day. Actually, I'd say Han Solo saved the day. I mean, yeah, Luke delivered the final blow, but like,
if Han Solo had not interfered, Luke would have been blasted.
Yes. And that's what the entire audience wanted. It's, you know, when you hear about these idiots saying, we're subverting expectations, you know, that's how you subvert an expectation right there.
Well, yes and no. What we see is actually kind of a triple subversion, because remember, at this point, we're coming off of a Hollywood which had been just glutted with westerns. Now, before anybody brings any hate to me, I love westerns. I will defend them
was
to the end.
amazing back in the day.
I'm a Native American who will completely defend westerns through and through. But the whole, you know, the cavalry arrives, heading them off the pass, that's all been done before, and it's been done to death. This subverts it slightly, then comes back to it. So literally, we're seeing a triple subversion right here. That's what made it work. It's like, okay, well, you know, the cavalry's going to arrive. They're going to be fine, right? No, it's not just the cavalry that arrives. In fact, the cavalry has been fighting and dying. What arrives is a hero. A reluctant one, but a hero.
Yeah, he did the right thing, and that's what nailed people, too. It's just that he came back, he did the right thing. And he did it at the right time, and he couldn't have done it any better. It was just it was a perfect storm. It really was, of everything. You had that music droning on, that you know, and you had R2 try to increase their power, then R2 gets fucking blown to bits.
Yeah, that was also that was actually kind of an emotional moment, because it's R2, he can't die.
You know, and then you had Luke, you know, struggling with, do I believe in the technology? Do I believe in my instincts? You know, you had, use the Force, Luke. Ben, I'm in the bathroom. Give me 5 minutes. You know, but
I've been doing this since I was 5 years old. I don't need training to aim.
It was the perfect timing. It was just, you knew that Luke was going to get it, and then you saw his childhood friend getting blasted, and then Wedge takes off. You know, you're like, Wedge, you asshole. He's like, I'll see you in the third one.
Sorry.
Tomorrow. You know, it was just, it was done so well. This is what made the movie so perfect. I mean, everything else is really passable at that point, but that final battle was just wow.
And of course, we had the final scene where they get their medals, and Chewbacca doesn't get one, but in the Star Wars Revisited, he does. It's digitally added.
Yeah, no discrimination against Harry Beans.
He also doesn't get hugged by Leia at the end of Force
We don't call that canon. That's. I'm sorry, but no. By that point, she would have hugged him. I'm sorry. That's non-canon. Disney fans, no. Just no. Go home. Read the EU. That's your canon.
Where are you going to pin the damn medal?
That's a good question.
Well, yeah. I mean, a Wookiee's fur can withstand a lightsaber hit dead on.
I know, but with Leia's luck, she would have stabbed the bastard. He would have lost control, ripped her fucking head off. You know, and that would have been the end of the whole thing right there. Just, you know.
Well, so what is everyone's final conclusion for Episode 4 Star Wars?
Timeless classic and a perfect example to future film students how to tackle various different styles of cinematography and practical effects and make it cohesive.
Agreed. I agree 100%. Also, you should definitely check out all the behind-the-scenes stuff, the making of, all the struggles they had to deal with to get the movie out. A lot of good stuff.
Yeah, Lucas kind of made out like a bandit with that one, because apparently, I may be wrong, but I think I read somewhere that Fox thought this was going to be a bomb. So Lucas said, you know what, you can keep this much, but I get 90% of the merchandise, or something like that.
Oh, he got all the merch.
Oh, man.
All of that
He was a
merchandise.
genius.
Yeah, well, I guess we could talk about that. Kenner was the company that they went through, and Star Wars got so big, blew up so much, that they couldn't make enough toys. They actually sold empty boxes, saying, "When we get them, you'll be the first," and that worked.
Yeah.
And the toy, I gotta say this. I know that I grew up way after all this stuff came out, but I gotta say, those old toys just weren't that good. I mean, Luke had a yellow lightsaber.
Actually, you joke, that's what made yellow lightsabers canon. It started out as a gaff and it became canon.
I remember they had the lightsabers and you had the switch that was underneath the arm, so that's how you extended it.
Yeah. Like I say, it from 1977 until when I was a kid. You know, we're talking the early 80s. The Star Wars toys were huge. And this is before we even had the clue of, oh, they'll come out with a re-release, or they'll come out with, you know, the prequels. No, this is when there is nothing Star Wars being made. If you were lucky, you got the laser discs or the early VHSs. The early VHSs were the unaltered footage, but they weren't put on the best stock. And laser discs, I might be a huge fan of, but the problem with laser discs is they have disc rot. If you have a Laserdisc collection, it's not going to live forever. It's going to die.
That's the sad part about all of it, because Laserdisc was awesome.
I actually do have Star Wars on Laserdisc, but I'm sure it's gonna be dead before too long.
If it starts looking cloudy or milky, it's done. Just keep it as a wall hanger.
That's what I was using it for anyway, because I don't even have a Laserdisc player. Growing up in the 90s, they did start re-releasing a lot of the old Star Wars toys, and Star Wars for me, that was my chosen toy universe. My very first action figure ever, and I'm going to mention this in a number of videos in this year. Those action figures, Pilot Luke was my very first action figure of like all time, and I'm a big fan of Pilot Luke. I actually just recently rebought one. In fact, as of this recording, just yesterday I bought Dash Rendar's Outrider. So yeah, Star Wars was always my favorite merch, like, of all time. When it comes to Star Wars for me, it's a movie, it's one of the few films that actually lives up to its own hype. You know, you hear about all these legendary movies like 2001, A Space Odyssey, and stuff like that. It's like, oh, it's nowhere near as good as I thought it was going to be. It's really just a overhyped piece of crap. But anyway, Star Wars is everything it purports to be. And we're still feeling its effects even to this day. I mean, without Star Wars, sci-fi until Star Wars was not really taken that seriously by media. Star Wars was always this real nerdy thing that only like the super nerds really liked. Star Wars really made sci-fi even more mainstream than Star Trek did in the 60s.
Yeah, it made it acceptable to the masses.
And it also made it to where sci-fi could actually be taken seriously, like, on film. I mean, when you think about the sci-fi films that had come out before, probably the best you had in terms of movies, not TV, was Forbidden Planet from the 50s.
Which one of these days I will build a 1-to-1, 100% perfect replica of Robbie the Robot. That is going to happen before I die.
And
it also spawned, Star Wars became such a phenomenon when it came out. It also spawned like other movies like it, like Battle Beyond the Stars and whatnot.
although that's not the best example, though.
No, but it inspired. Yeah. Once you realize Mel Brooks is going to make a parody of it, you realize you're onto something massive.
But that parody came out kind of too late, though. Like,
not really, because remember, it came out too late to make a difference for the movie, sure, but as stated, that was the 80s. It came out in the late 80s, but even then, the toys and all the merch were still selling off the shelves pretty darn fast.
There is never a too late to have Mel Brooks parody your movie.
Amen to that.
Frankenstein?
Yep.
Young Frankenstein.
It's Frankenstein. My grandfather's work was doo-doo!
if it wasn't for A New Hope, Star Trek wouldn't have came back. Even Shatner has said this.
Yeah.
It was because of the success of A New Hope that Paramount was looking for properties it could resurrect, and Trek was one of them, and that's when motion picture came out.
The
So
slow motion picture.
Something good that I think we could delve into personally is what version, do we enjoy the most?
I'm gonna be the weird purist and say the original, even though I do kind of like some of the special editions.
Me personally, I love the original one where they didn't mess with it. The one that I saw in theaters when they re-released it in theaters, you know, where they added the fucking boom ring, you know, that was okay. But there was a lot of times where they just tried to unnecessary like comedy moments where, oh, the giant thing rises up and the guy falls off of it in Mos Eisley. It was just, I don't know. It's like I saw the first one in theaters when they re-released it. I saw Empire when they re-released it in theaters, and they added so much footage that I literally almost fell asleep by the end of the movie. I didn't even bother seeing the third one, and then when I heard that they did a dance number, ugh, you know.
Yeah, I can relate to that.
I think the first one was just cut perfectly, and they didn't need to touch anything else. You know, I mean, aside from adding the blast ring from when they blew up the Death Star in Alderaan, that's really about it.
Yeah, my feeling is basically the special editions are nice for the fact they touch up the footage for modern higher res. But that being said, it's a cherry on top, and the to me the special editions are not just stopping at one cherry on top. Now you just take an entire bottle of maraschino cherries, just dumping it all over the sundae.
And then you can't taste the whipped cream.
Exactly.
Well, it's bullshit that Lucas refuses to do a high definition version of the
Well, what's
fans
his
that did
reason?
it, but because he doesn't consider them like his versions. He don't consider them anymore. He likes the special editions. He considers that his like current, the ones that matter. You know, he doesn't like the
Well,
original.
That's the finished way that he did it. You know, the thing is I understand his point of view because I mean, when you create something and then you've improved on it, you feel that that it's finally done. You don't want to mess with it anymore. You know, I mean,
But he did mess with them more because he made more changes than the Blu-rays. He added like extra rocks when like R2 was hiding the Jawas, and like he added some weird banshee scream that Ben gives, and all kinds of stuff.
I didn't see that.
The other sequels, which we'll get to later, but I'm just gonna say it anyways. He added a CG Ewok blinking now. When Vader is facing the Emperor at the end of Return of the Jedi, he goes, no. And
I
then he picks up
remember
the
that.
Emperor and throws him over. So,
I remember that.
the VHS, the DVD, and the Blu-ray, all three of them have further changes done each time.
I do remember that they added that. No.
Yeah. On the VHS of Empire Strikes Back, the special edition, Luke screams as he's falling. And then they remove that for the DVD. So it's like he's always tinkering. You know?
Yeah, it's a little nutty how much he adds and changes. Though you got to ask yourself, when James Earl Jones stubs his toe, does he let out a Vader no?
No.
See, to me it was perfect, the original in the VHS when he got his arm cut off and Vader just you know, like to me that's the perfect sound right there. And I mean, if they ever do re-release it, someone at Disney's gonna fuck up and they're gonna put in Mufasa falling down the cliff sound.
Oh God!
Instead of the no, you're gonna hear
That, or you're gonna hear Goofy yelling.
I would actually like to see that. For me,
Or so make a fan edit of that. Just add those sound
it
effects.
probably exists.
I'll do it right tonight.
But yeah, there is I guess we can get in the fan edits briefly of A New Hope. There is a fan special edition where a fan actually did their own digital effects and stuff like that, which is kind of neat. And there's like a Grindhouse edition, and then there's the despecialized edition, which is the closest you're ever gonna get to a HD version of the original. They literally rotoscoped in original effects back in over the CG stuff they did.
That must have been a hell of a project.
It must have paid off really, really well. I should do a fan edit where I do fucking Al Pacino's voice over Darth Vader's lines.
That would be great. For me,
Darth
my favorite.
Vader, only you could be so bold as to come onto here. The Republic will not stand for this. You cunt. Who do you think you're talking to? Do you really think the Empire wants to put up with your shit anymore?
You should voice over all the characters, including Leia.
No, I'll just do it as Darth Vader.
Oh.
Well, it's perfect because it's like the Senate will not stand for this. You're standing with the Senate. It's finished. It's over.
Wait,
And
can
I'm
you
not
do,
listening to
can
you
you do
anymore.
your Norma Bates voice for Leia?
Oh, that would be
Oh
hilarious.
God.
What was it? Norman.
No,
Darth
the one
Vader.
from the one from the prequel. You know, the flower water crap.
Oh, put the flower on that one. Put the Darth Vader. Only you could be so bold as to put the flower water on Mummy's neck.
Oh God, no! Please, God, no!
I sent something both amazing and horrible at the same time happening.
I can do the Al Pacino thing definitely.
It's as if the voice of 1,000 nerds cried out, then were silenced.
You
The
are
laughter.
going to tell me what those plans are. You don't tell me what the plans are. I'm gonna take you out back. I'm gonna fuck your mother, which I already did, because that's how you were born. I'm gonna take you out back. I'll fuck you too.
Oh.
Grab your ass. And then I'll show you a real lightsaber. You are gonna talk to me. Oh yes, you will. You see this thing? This big black thing? And I'm not talking about my helmet. This thing with the needles. It's gonna go into you.
Actually, I'd pay to watch that.
I'll do it one day.
By far, my favorite cut of Episode 4 is actually the Star Wars Revisited fan edit. It leaves intact all of the things you want, you know, like Han shooting first and stuff like that, but it adds in some new effects that are actually good. During the Death Star battle, they added in a shitload of TIE fighters coming in, set to the Imperial theme. I remember when I first saw that, I was like, holy shit! Because it's really an awesome thing to see. They do change some of the music during the Obi-Wan versus Darth Vader fight. They set Duel of Heroes as the music. It actually sounds pretty good. So that would be by far my favorite, with the second one being the VHS version that I saw, the non-special edition.
You said Duel of the Heroes.
It's just they
Yeah.
added so much.
It's different
crap
from
to the
Duel-
later ones.
It's different from Duel of Fates.
Oh.
It is legitimately different.
I
was-
think one of the biggest reasons why I don't these was just, you know, Han Solo moving his head to dodge a lightsaber blast. I mean, come on. But we wanted to make him less cold-blooded. He's doing what he's doing to survive. A guy was going to take him hostage. You know, how is that cold-blooded? It's not like he just walked up behind a random bar patron and shot him in the back of the head. This is a man who got a gun pulled on him by a fucking green Nerf ball with spikes on it.
Yeah,
You
it
know?
loaded
Charles
gun,
Bronson.
safety off, aimed at his head. Wouldn't you shoot?
Yeah.
Charles Bronson is Han Solo.
I'd
So
watch that.
And then there was the tacked on Jabba the Hutt sequence. I would have rather had the fat man in the fur coat. 'Cause
Yeah, but
and then hearing all I can hear is George Lucas describing the scene. And then we kind of knocked out Han, so we made it look like he was stepping on his tail. You know, so children will laugh at that. You know? Children didn't laugh at it because kids didn't want to see that shit. Adults laughed their asses off because it looks stupid.
Not
Yeah.
just that, but like it's one of those things where like they had Boba Fett show up. They just lingered on him. It's like, see, it's Boba Fett. Isn't that awesome? Not really. I didn't really need to see that.
Boba Fett is one of the characters that, oh my god, the fans have killed. I have never. Oh my god, Boba Fett is such a badass. You saw Boba Fett for like 10 minutes, you know, and then like 20 minutes later he got beaten by a blind man in the next movie. You know, so it's like,
Yeah.
yeah, he's real hardcore.
IG-88 technically had a bit more cred than Boba Fett at that point.
Pretty much. You know, I mean, it was a cool character, and I think what made Boba Fett so cool was that he was just mysterious. And then once that mystique was taken away, it's kind of like Friday the 13th Part 35, you know, it's like, who's the killer? I think we know.
Wait, no, I know this one. It's Mike Myers,
Maybe.
right?
Oh, behave.
It's
Colonel
Norma.
Mustard in the kitchen with a candlestick. I don't know.
It's Norma. All right. Well, we've been going on for over an hour now, so that's Star Wars. It's something you can talk about for hours on end.
Yeah, this didn't even feel like an hour.
Because it's such a good movie. It's a thing that it's quintessential because it was something that was not designed via focus groups. It was something where one man started out with a vision and worked together with a lot of really talented individuals to create something that would last a lifetime.
And he really did throw everything he had into this too, right?
Yeah, very much so.
Like, he even had
This
a heart
is a
attack.
make-or-break movie.
You know, so it's the epitome of the American dream, because this man truly did go all in for his dream, and it paid off.
And he, in many instances, he's succeeded beyond his wildest imaginings, I think.
Well, he did sell it to Disney.
We're gonna ignore that even happened.
Disney can do a lot of things, but here's one thing Disney cannot do: the treasured memory of Star Wars. They cannot destroy the memory.
No, they can't. And that's the thing. I don't understand why a lot of people fucking are so upset about that. Well, they ruined the new movies. Yeah, we all know that. Everybody that grew up on Star Wars knows that. You know, that's why we're not watching it. I'm not gonna go see it. I have no desire to see it, so I'm not gonna watch it. It's like with the remaking of Ghostbusters. Yeah, I bitched about it, but it didn't ruin the original Ghostbusters for me.
Yeah, we still got the first two films, and we've got a really kick-ass game, which was really supposed to be Ghostbusters 3.
3, yeah, that was a game that I will tell anybody to get. You know, that's the only thing that I miss about having a PS3 is not having is not being able to play that Ghostbusters.
Pick it up on Steam, man. The PC version's great.
Really, they have it on PC? I didn't know that.
Yeah.
Yeah. It is at that. All right.
Is it that version though?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Holy shit! I didn't know this.
Yep.
I gotta go look this up now.
And
I
it's
think he
cheap.
got pulled.
What? Don't say that.
Yeah, because he movie licensed games and shit. Ugh.
Oh, God damn it. Well,
No. There are still physical forms of it out there. 'Cause remember, it got a European release as well.
I think GameStop is like the only place that sells Steam keys for it.
Even then, you can, like I said, you can find the physical release. Go onto English eBay.uk. You'll find copies of it.
Or just pirate it.
No,
well, you can't say that.
there's no need to pirate it because there's plenty of physical copies out there, and they're not that expensive at all.
Do
Pirating
they
is
make
wrong.
physical copies for the PC version?
Yeah. Remember, the UK and EU markets demanded at the time for a physical release to be done. So
Well, there is
you
a
can still get them.
There is a Ghostbusters game on Steam, but I'm telling you right now that it's definitely not it's not Ghostbusters.
No,
was
that's a
released.
Sanctum of Slime. I'm looking at it right now.
No, they have a
this
newer
is-
one too.
This is Ghostbusters that came out in 2016, and the reviews are mostly negative.
Yeah, you can get the Ghostbusters game physical form if you go onto European or UK eBay. You can find physical copies.
I'm pretty sure.
Well, and so that's Ghostbusters, ladies and gentlemen. And so, that is, of course, the review/discussion of Episode 4. If you haven't seen it, it's worth watching. And so, I am GeneralLotz.
That's a Wolfman. Thanks so much for having me, Lotz.
I'm Reignick.
I'm Ragekiller.
And we can wish you good Episode 5 and 6, or whatever makes you happy. If you enjoyed this video, please consider subscribing, and if you can, please consider supporting me on Patreon so that I can continue bringing you this awesome content.